I was 34 years old when I found out exactly how much my parents believed my name was worth. $50,000. That was the number. Not attached to love, not attached to grief, not attached to anything tender or human. Just a figure, a sum, a demand. And somehow that demand came wrapped in 4 attorneys, a fake family dinner, and a conference room set up inside my parents' dining room like they thought I'd be too emotional to notice what they were doing. Welcome back to Family Revenge Stories New, where the soft-spoken ones usually know exactly where the paperwork is, and where family finds out a boundary can cost more than they expected. If you like stories about betrayal, quiet strategy, and consequences that arrive wearing business clothes, go ahead and leave a comment, subscribe, and settle in. I'm not going to tell you my name, because for this story it doesn't matter. What matters is what I do. I'm a certified forensic accountant. I've been doing this work for 14 years, mostly on estate disputes and trust litigation. My job is reading the story underneath the story. I look at wills, amendments, transfers, signatures, beneficiary changes, family loans that were never documented, and all the ugly little ways people rewrite love once money enters the room. When you do that for long enough, you stop hearing families the same way. Most people hear concern. I hear leverage. Most people hear generosity. I hear expectation. Most people hear, we're all just trying our best. I hear competing claims on an asset. That sounds cold, maybe, but it teaches you something useful. It teaches you that what people feel entitled to and what they're actually owed are almost never the same thing. I got married when I was 26 to a man named Eli. He repaired pipe organs for a living, which is such a strangely specific job that people always laughed when he told them. He didn't mind. Eli was never interested in performing for people. He was one of those rare men who made the room calmer just by standing in it. Quiet, but not withdrawn. Steady, thoughtful, like an old church before the lights come on. We had 6 years together. Then one Tuesday in March, an aneurysm took him in our kitchen before the coffee had even gone cold. There are details grief freezes in place whether you want them or not. The mug on the counter, the sound of a chair scraping the floor, the exact slant of afternoon light on tile. I kept that mug. I still have it. I couldn't tell you what I wore to his funeral, but I could tell you where that mug is right now. My family operated on a completely different emotional currency. My father built a contracting company from scratch and talked about sacrifice like he personally invented it. My mother managed the household the way some people manage private equity, quietly, tightly, with full authority and no transparency. My younger sister, Marissa, was the one everything bent around. If she overspent, it was understandable. If she made a mistake, someone else cleaned it up. If she needed rescuing, the family formed a rescue committee by sunset. And me, I was dependable. I was the one who showed up early, the one who covered a deposit when there was a delay, the one who stepped in when my father's business hit a bad year and nobody wanted to call it a bailout, the one who solved problems without making anybody feel embarrassed. I never kept score because I thought love and scorekeeping were opposites. What I understand now is that families like mine are very comfortable taking from the person who never sends an invoice. In my line of work, there's a concept called implied consideration. It's when value gets exchanged without the terms ever being clearly stated. Later, when people disagree, everyone suddenly remembers the arrangement in a way that benefits them. That was my role in my family for 30 years. I gave. They assumed. I stepped in. They adjusted upward. I absorbed the impact. They called it closeness. I didn't see it clearly until after Eli died, because grief has a way of stripping varnish off people. What remains is usually what was there all along. The real beginning of this story was a Thursday in September, about 4 months after the funeral. My mother called me in the late afternoon. She didn't ask how I was sleeping. She didn't ask whether I'd eaten. She didn't ask whether the house felt too quiet. She opened with a wedding budget. Marissa's venue, she told me, needed the deposit by Friday. The whole wedding would come to $50,000, and in her opinion it made perfect sense that I cover it. I remember being so stunned that I didn't even feel angry at first. I just asked, why exactly would that make sense? And my mother said, like she was explaining something obvious to a child, because you have Eli's life insurance now. You're not going to need all of that. There are moments when my personal life and professional instincts overlap so completely that I stop feeling like a daughter and start behaving like a witness. While she was still talking, I opened the notes app on my phone and wrote down the date, the time, and her exact words. You don't need all of that. That sentence told me more than she intended. 2 days later, my father texted me. We raised you to take care of family. This is what that means now. I saved that too. Not because I had a plan yet, but because some part of me already understood I was no longer in a conversation. I was in the early stage of a pressure campaign. A week after that, Marissa came to my house, first visit since the funeral. She brought a binder full of wedding details and sat on my couch acting like she was doing 2 things at once, checking on me and shopping with my money. She asked how I was holding up, then immediately asked whether I liked the cream linens or the ivory ones better, since, as she put it, I'd be the one paying for them anyway. That binder sat on my lap for a long time after she left. I didn't cry. I read. That's what I do. I read the contract she'd left behind, and in 10 minutes I knew the deposit date, the cancellation language, and the fact that nobody in my family had legally committed themselves to a single dollar of it. They were just trying to place me where the signature line would eventually go. 10 days later, I learned something they didn't know I knew. I was sitting in Eli's estate attorney's office across from a man named Whitfield, who had the kind of careful, exact way of speaking that makes you trust him immediately or dislike him on sight. He told me Eli had revised his trust about a year and a half before he died. I had no idea. Not because he was hiding things from me, but because Eli was the kind of person who handled protection quietly. If a hinge squeaked, he oiled it. If a pipe leaked, he fixed it. If he saw a storm coming, apparently, he built the shelter first and explained it never. Whitfield handed me the amendment. Most of Eli's estate, the insurance payout, the house, the rental property from his father, had been moved into a trust with a very specific restriction. The funds were intended for the continuation of the life we had built together. Household continuity, living expenses, stability, not gifts, not informal loans, not helping out extended family. And if I violated that, if I distributed any of it to relatives outside the trust's permitted use, the remainder would automatically be diverted to a scholarship fund at a music conservatory in Eli's name. Whitfield read the clause once, then again. Then, because I asked him to, a third time. I wanted the exact wording, not the emotional meaning, the legal meaning. That was the first shock. The second hit harder. Inside the same file was a short handwritten letter from Eli, dated the same day as the amendment. Whitfield left me alone to read it. It was brief, just a few sentences, but one line lodged in me so deeply I still hear it exactly as he wrote it. I've watched them treat your generosity like a billable service they never intend to pay for. Let this be the year you stop underwriting people who only remember you when they need coverage. He saw it. That's what broke me, more than the money, more than the trust. He had seen it clearly enough to prepare for it, and loved me enough not to leave me exposed to it. I didn't call my family after that, not immediately. I went back to work, I organized the documents, I made copies, I stored the originals. I waited. Because in my world, you do not move until the pattern is visible. The pattern appeared fast. My mother started a group text titled Wedding Budget Final and attached a spreadsheet. On that spreadsheet was a line already filled in. Sister contribution, $50,000. Not proposed, not discussed. Entered as if payment were already authorized. My father called and casually mentioned that he'd told the venue everything was handled. Marissa posted online about her dream wedding and thanked family who always come through. Then tagged me like public pressure might do what honesty couldn't. Then my father came to my house unannounced one Sunday evening and sat at my kitchen table. The same table where Eli used to spread music manuals and repair notes and said, "This is family money, not just yours, and Eli would want family taken care of." I let him finish. Then I asked him one question. Which family did Eli name in his trust? He didn't answer that. He pivoted right back to the venue deadline. That told me everything I needed to know. That night, I called my own attorney and told her to move forward, draft the letters, formal communication only, no more casual ambiguity, no more room for anyone to pretend this was a misunderstanding. If you've ever seen people who couldn't make time for your grief suddenly become very available when inheritance enters the chat, then you already know what happened next. 2 weeks later, my mother invited me to a family dinner to work through the wedding situation together. A cousin tipped me off before I arrived. Apparently, my parents had hired an attorney, and that attorney had brought additional colleagues. The dinner was theater. The goal was pressure. They were hoping that if they surrounded me with enough authority, I'd sign something before I had space to think. So I went. And I brought a folder. Not a thick one. A thin one. Deliberately thin. You don't need a mountain of evidence when the truth is neatly tabbed. When I walked in, the room had been staged. The dining table had been extended. Extra chairs, coffee cups, yellow pads. 4 strangers arranged like a panel. My mother called them people helping us sort things out, as if I couldn't see the law firm name sitting on the papers in front of them. I recognized the firm instantly. Family mediation specialists, not litigators. That mattered. They weren't preparing for court. They were there to manufacture intimidation. My father started the performance. He talked about family unity, legacy, sacrifice, the importance of not letting money come between people. Then, like he was sure this would land, he invoked Eli. Said Eli would hate to see us divided like this. My mother followed with how I had always been the strong one, which in our family had always meant the one expected to absorb damage without complaint. Marissa mostly stayed quiet, though she had those sample swatches with her, still somehow treating the entire thing like a wedding planning inconvenience rather than a moral collapse. When they were done, everyone turned to me like I was supposed to give them the moment they had set the stage for. Instead, I opened the folder. The first paper I placed on the table was my mother's statement. "You're not going to need all of that." I read the date and time aloud and slid it across to her. Then my father's text. "We raised you to take care of family. This is what that means now." I set it down beside hers and said very calmly, "That was sent 11 days after my husband's funeral. Since we have counsel present, I'd like the timing noted." One of the attorneys shifted in his seat. Just slightly, but enough. Next came the venue contract Marissa had left behind. I pointed out the deposit language, the obligations, and the complete absence of anyone's signature, including mine. Then I set down the trust summary prepared by Whitfield and read the controlling clause out loud, slowly, clearly. No drama, just words doing what words do when they're enforceable. No distributions to extended family, no gifts, no loans. Violation results in forfeiture to the named scholarship fund. My father actually said, "That can't possibly hold up." And before I could respond, one of the attorneys did it for me. He said, in that measured tone professionals use when they regret taking a client's version of events at face value, "It's enforceable." The energy changed right there. My father looked betrayed, which would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. My mother tried a different tactic. Suddenly it wasn't about money anymore. It was about my cruelty, my hardness, my inability to let people grieve imperfectly. Marissa snapped that I was hiding behind paperwork because I didn't want to admit I was selfish. That part almost made me laugh. I handle paperwork for a living. Paperwork is just the written form of truth people wish were negotiable. The louder they got, the quieter I became. That's something people misunderstand. They think raising your voice makes you stronger in a room. Usually it means you've run out of facts. By the time my father said the word lawsuit, 2 of his own attorneys looked actively miserable. That was when I placed the last piece of paper on the table, a copy of Eli's letter. Not the original. I'd never have risked that. But enough. I didn't read the whole thing. I only read the line that mattered. "Let this be the year you stop underwriting people who only remember you when they need coverage." And for the first time all evening, nobody had a response. No one moved. No one interrupted. Even Marissa looked down. Then from the far end of the table, my Uncle Ray, my father's brother, mostly silent until then, said quietly, "She's not wrong. I told you one day this would come back around." It wasn't a heroic moment. It wasn't absolution. It wasn't nearly enough. But it was the first honest sentence anyone else in that family had spoken in years. I stood up. I closed the folder, but I left Eli's letter on the table where they could keep staring at it after I was gone. And before I walked out, I said, "For 30 years, I've been this family's emergency fund. Effective tonight, that account is closed." Then I left. I didn't wait for rebuttals. I didn't stay for tears. I didn't stay for revisionist history. Once a room has shown you its true purpose, there's no virtue in remaining seated. After that, everything resolved exactly the way real things usually resolve, on paper, not in emotion. My parents' attorneys backed away once they understood the trust was solid, and any lawsuit would fail almost immediately. The $50,000 was never paid. Marissa still got married, just not at the fantasy price point she had assigned to my widowhood. The wedding ended up costing $22,000. Smaller venue, fewer guests. My parents somehow found the money themselves, which was especially interesting considering how impossible they had insisted it was when they were trying to take mine. Funny how often a financial emergency disappears the moment someone realizes extortion won't work. Things with my family changed after that, or maybe they just became more honest. My mother and I now speak twice a year, usually on holidays, and only in those careful, polished sentences people use when they're pretending civility is the same thing as repair. My father and I do not speak at all. That may be forever. And I'm okay with that in the way you become okay with final numbers once you stop trying to force them to mean something else. Marissa sent me one email about 3 months later. It said, "I hope you're doing okay." That was it. No accountability, no apology, no acknowledgement of what she participated in, just a clean little sentence tossed into the void like that could bridge anything. I didn't answer. Some fractures do not become smaller just because the person who caused them finally gets uncomfortable with the silence. Uncle Ray still calls sometimes, mostly to make small talk. Weather, errands, old stories, things that don't ask anything from me. It's not redemption exactly, but there is something decent in a person choosing finally not to take. Eli's letter sits framed on a shelf near the coffee maker now, next to the mug from that Tuesday morning. I don't display it as some kind of victory. That isn't what it is. It's proof that one person saw the whole equation. He saw the pattern I had normalized. He saw the extraction disguised as loyalty. He saw the cost of always being the capable one in a family that treats capability like permission. And he made sure I would have one protected thing when he was gone. I never violated the trust. I never touched the money the way they wanted me to. Instead, I called the conservatory named in the clause and asked how to expand the scholarship before any forfeiture mechanism ever needed to activate. We turned it into 2 annual annual apprenticeships in Eli's name for students training in organ repair who otherwise wouldn't have had the means. That felt right. Eli spent his whole life restoring things most people walked past without noticing. It made sense to let his name keep doing that. People sometimes ask whether I regret how that night ended. They ask carefully, like what they really mean is, do you regret choosing yourself over peace? And the answer is no. I didn't destroy my family that night. I stopped financing a version of it that only functioned when I agreed to disappear inside it. That's different. There's this idea people cling to, especially in families, that boundaries are cruel because they change the relationship. But that's not really true. Boundaries don't ruin relationships. They expose the terms that were already there. If the relationship only works when one person keeps overpaying, then it was never stable. It was subsidized. I spent years thinking love meant showing up without limits. Now I think love without limits is just another word people use when they benefit from your lack of them. So if you're listening to this and there's a part of your life where you've been treated like an open tab, consider this your reminder. You are allowed to close it. You are allowed to document what happened. You are allowed to stop explaining. You are allowed to refuse the role they assigned you just because you've played it for a long time. And if all you do this week is update one document, save one message, write down one sentence somebody said that told you exactly who they are, that counts. Sometimes the first act of self-respect is simply keeping the record straight. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever been the quiet one people underestimated, the dependable one they kept sending the bill to, then you already know. The softest voice in the room is often the one holding the evidence. Leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.